Uh-oh, looks like Cartoon Network's been tweeting again. Darwin and our other iconic Cartoon Network show styles. Black square, white square. Which one is your favorite? Wrong kind of fish, orange heart. My favorite's the one I can only assume is supposed to represent the Australian beer brand, cause it sure as Shinola ain't the style of Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. I mean, for the love of Craig McCracken, all you had to do was not give him an outline. That show made one noteworthy design decision, and you blew it. Ha, Blue, get it? Cause that's the guy from the thing. Anyway, while Cartoon Network was failing at Blue's aesthetic, Disney was fumbling even harder with Bluey's. At least CN got some of theirs to work. Mickey Mouthless over here is just Miska Mooska messed up. This ain't the right animal or the right art style. But fear not, we at the Harry Gold Show are going to show these bafflingly apathetic networks how swapping cartoon art styles is really done. You're welcome, mega corporations.
Coming to you from beautiful downtown Fortitude Valley, it's the Harry Gold Show, with your host, Harry Gold.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the program. Now, neither Cartoon Network nor the Mouse House are new to making bizarre, low-caliber art style swaps, nor am I new to redrawing them. But honestly, I thought we'd seen the last of it. Nickelodeon made such a calamitous botch of this already regrettable trend that surely it must have gone the way of the Harlem Shake by now, right? Right? Several of our beautiful chums in the audience let me know that, true to Hollywood form, sequels to this desiccated corpse of an idea just keep ghoulishly rising from the depths, starting with Darwin Watterson from The Amazing World of Gumball. The quality of CN's DW graphic is as checkered as their logo. Now that's brand synergy. While some resemble their intended styles about as much as the Meg 2 resembles Shakespeare, some of them aren't half bad. But hey, what is the internet if not a festering hive of pedantic nitpickers anyway? For instance, I can't help but notice that for what purports to be a drawing of 9 Darwins, this thing is running a little short on sentient sashimi. It's not a fish. Why isn't it a fish? Where's all the fish? They opted to pull a reverse Cusco, / Brave, / Brother Bear, Princess and the Frog, Sword in the Stone, Pinocchio. What's with Disney turning people into animals? They polyjuiced half of these art styles into Darwin-flavored animorphs, and I do get why. If you want to draw a fish in an art style, it would probably help to first see a fish in that art style. And Codename Kids Next Door is about as useful a destination for scoping out sea life as the middle of the Mojave Desert. But that really doesn't explain what's going on with Dexter's lab over here. That show's outlines have the variable width of a Christian Bale highlight reel, while the inkage on this sprog is thinner than Elon's pre-op hairline. In fact, as in the same network's previous attempts, a severe girth allergy pervades all these outlines, regardless of the style's actual line qualities. Plus, they've given all their shading the post-movie Simpsons treatment, despite normally having the approximate depth of a used petri dish. That includes Earth 1 Darwin, yet somehow the single piece of shading he's actually supposed to have is conspicuously AFK, which implies they drew this thing especially, rather than just slamming Darwin Gumball into Yahoo Images and praying for a real PNG. That's a lot of effort to go to just to mess it up. Who could have predicted that from Warner Brothers? But even then, the design ain't right here either, especially the finicky costume and Meowth-paw-shaped nose. Dexter was all about streamlined simplicity with copiously vertical eyeballs and the occasional bout of loop-de-loops. There, I'd call that a decent pastiche. Though looking at it now, I can't help but notice one teensy little snag. Generally, if one wanted to draw Darwin Watterson from The Amazing World of Gumball and have people recognize it as Darwin Watterson from The Amazing World of Gumball, it might help if it actually looked even slightly like Darwin Watterson from The Amazing World of Gumball. This, on the other hand, bears about as much resemblance to Gumball Darwin as Charles Darwin. It's just some punk moppet who wandered in with a little tangerine in his wardrobe. You might as well use a picture of Kenny or Velma or R. Kelly. Now, it's entirely possible to make an animal version of a human character or vice versa and keep them recognizable. But in order to do this, you need to actually transfer some notable features over. In fact, speaking of mutating orange-garbed squirts into seafood, here's one I prepared earlier. But he has a fit, do, and conspicuous dental malfunction to apply to a new design. Darwin presents a bit more of an obstacle in that his focal trait is a fish. Ditch that completely, and all you've got left are briny sneakers and some stray eyelashes. You'd have an easier time picking DB Cooper out of a crowd. So we need to retain as much of the original Darwin's appearance as we possibly can. The first thing to think about is that orange color. Now, Twitter's reaction to Cartoon Network making human Darwin a black kid went pretty pretty much exactly as you'd expect. Some...
Yay, representation!
Some... woke. A little...
Actually, the voice actor is African American, so...
and even some...
Really, it's racist they did make him black. How dare you compare people of color to fish?
But, being the epically enlightened person I am, I'm happy to inform you that they all missed the point. If what the actor looks like was relevant, they'd have hired a bald Oompa Loompa and amputated his torso. What should be the priority here is making the human character look like Darwin himself. Of course, stale Donald Trump jokes aside, people don't actually come in this shade of Lorax orange, which means he will need a normal human skin tone, and what Cartoon Network has chosen already works fine. But not having that impaled by Tropicana complexion means we've lost one of Darwin's precious few identifiable features, and the design will need to compensate. The original versions have barely any apricot on them at all, when we want this kid to be drowning in the stuff. We also have to import over as much of Darwin's silhouette as possible. Even if he can't maintain the torso shortage or those sock-full of cottage cheese limbs, we otherwise want this thing to basically be our fishy friend's CalArts beanbag head transplanted onto a style-appropriate human body. Which means we also need to cram some of that pumpkin pigment back in there, and I see two possible avenues. Firstly, the hairstyles on Cartoon Network's Ed, Edd n Eddy and Steven Universe versions already somewhat resemble a fishtail. Injecting a little more keratin into his follicles should help sell the connection. Alternatively, we could also use orange headwear, like the backwards baseball cap in the K&D illustration, to achieve a similar effect. Then the Dexter art style actually offers us the greatest latitude of them all. That universe is so stylized that a man with Darwin's figure wouldn't even raise an eyebrow. Now that's body positivity. All this said, the aim here, as with all of our style swaps, is to maximize on recognizability. Sometimes the best way to achieve this is to bring your character in line with what makes sense in their new style's universe. Not every cartoon is the kind of place you're liable to find sapient sea critters. But, while changing species can help with recognizing the art style, it also complicates the audience's ability to recognize the character. I can't say I've ever seen a redhead and thought, I'll bet his past life was spent in a fishbowl. That means you really want to avoid the Beast Boy shtick if you possibly can. Darwin in his original form is, after all, just a head with limbs. So long as you can make those parts recognizable, all four of these styles should cope fine with being divested of a spinal column. For instance, the style for Codename Kids Next Door is easy to spot because pretty much every character in it has that same bootleg Stewie Griffin brain case, as well as eyes like pre-sucked good and plenty's with manic neurosis lines that make them look one stubbed toe short of going postal. Their mouths are more skewed to one side than a cable newscaster with pinchably podgy cheeks, and in this case a tail fin will have to take the place of their adamantly wing-nutular ears. Limbs are also so frail and noodly, it's a miracle of science that they can support those disquietingly overgrown hands. That kind of kinked head you tend to find in Steven's universe already happens to be quite similar to Darwin's. Ditto for those jelly beans Steve is gorilla glued to his forehead. While characters in this style do often sport tallish eyes, chunky limbs, and a single grotesquely broad gigatooth, by far the most quintessentially Steven Universe feature is those nasty little collagen lips. Ed, Edd n Eddy has a highly erratic line width that makes the whole thing seem jittery and frazzled, and that on the verge of mental breakdown aesthetic is only enhanced by their different-sized boggle eyes and crooked, forced-at-gunpoint-looking smiles. Eyebrows tend to leak off tops of heads around here, while legs are absurdly short and scrawny, and the less said about that hideous splayed bouquet of thumbs they call hands, the better. And finally, Dexter's style likes generously portioned pupils for those aforementioned horizontally stunted eyeballs, as well as mouths capable of covering considerable surface area. Simple shapes and continuous contours are very much the trending fashion in the lab, intermittently dotted with the occasional sharp corner. They also favor narrow limbs and loose, splattery fingers. But let's have a break from all these infernal fish and take a trip to everyone's favorite upside-down sandpit, where snakes, spiders, and Hemsworths abound. No matter what style she's in, Bluey is always too cute. Which one is your favorite? Thanks to you fine folks in the audience, we've also been alerted to Disney's latest stab at swapping styles. And I say stab, but decapitation might be the more appropriate word. This time focusing on Australia's most popular, and as far as anyone cares, only cartoon character, Bluey Healer. And crikey, most of these are not even close.
Why would they do this to you? It's just a bear turned to blue. Is this the best they can do, Bluey?
The first of many baffling choices to jump out at me here is turning the bear in the big blue house into a bath mat, dyeing him blue and saying, yep, I guess that's a dog. Why doesn't it have a mouth? Why is it just a head? And why did they choose to include Muppet babies as well, when those are the exact same Jim Henson puppet art style? One's just a CG version of the other. In fact, I've no idea why they'd choose physical puppets as an art style for this drawing in the first place. Lord knows it would have made my life much easier if we just stuck to the original Muppet Babies version of the style from the old 2D cartoon, but unfortunately I've no such luck. In order to satisfy my vampiric thirst for stylistic fidelity, a mere doodle won't cut the Grey Poupon. And unfortunately, building a whole new puppet just for this isn't in the budget. Instead, I'll have to take a mess of Muppet glamour shots and Photoshop them to hell and back until it resembles the canine in question. That Henson aesthetic favours hefty lids on skew-if eyes and big old Muppety mouths that flap open on a hinge. Big round noses are also pretty par for the course, and Bluey's fur fits right in with all the other monsters and animals, and monsters called Animal. The Muppet Babies version is also an inexplicable mouthless doormat, though at least they didn't just palette swap Kermit this time. This is basically the same deal as the last one, except instead of editing photos, we have to edit renders of 3D models. Unlike Bluey, these puppets are more inclined to possession of necks, but we can still retain a hint of that polygonal silhouette. Once again, Bob Iger and friends seem to have their taxonomy crossed. If this Pickwick Packer is a dog, my name's Iggy Azalea. It looks more like a cat-mouse hybrid that crawled out of the worst possible Tom and Jerry fanfic. Everyone in the Pickwick basket is just an oversaturated polygon with 4 cankles anyway, so why further amputation was deemed necessary is between the unpaid intern that made this and God. First person to say it's just a flesh wound gets banished to the back rooms.
But didn't you just say it?
Oh. Mouths are small and skewed, and outlines should be coloured, bar those huge circle eyes that bring us a few degrees short of a cease and desist from Domino's. And I don't know if it was the lysergic kind, or the fall and get a concussion kind, but some manner of trip must have taken place to achieve pupils that dilated. I've actually never heard of Eleanor of Avalor, and I can't say the creepy human eyes on this mouthless mutant are making the best first impression. Let me look it up on my phone real quick. Hello, Wikipedia? It's another CGI show. Shoot dang. Why would you make a graphic about drawing styles where the majority of styles aren't drawings? Anyway, animal faces here are loosely angular and limbs are semi-realistic. The Avalor aesthetic is just generic as all heck and harbors the kind of smoothed over Pride Rock rejects you'd expect to find in a direct-to-DVD DreamWorks knockoff. You know, I thought this whole illustration was a bit of a come down from the relative competence of the last attempt, and that thing was just circles. But at least they decided to pay tribute to the classics and make the Mickey Mouse design entirely with the circle tool, as it gazes soullessly into the abyss. This art style is essentially the same one Disney's been flogging for the better part of a century, and I'd have preferred it if we stuck to the original. Come on, Disney Junior Twitter account. Why aren't you considering my needs? But this one's a CGI edit job as well. For what feels like the 100th time this video, we can see that tall eyes and thin bendy limbs are once again the societal norm here, and no mammal from the mouse house would be caught dead without gloves either. This is just the Lion Guard's pro tag with Dr. Manhattan face paint. Can they not tell the difference between a lion and a dog? 2012 Snoop call, he wants his publicity stunt back. Style-wise, it's pretty much just the Lion King. 90s Disney-style, representational-ish animal proportions with bloated almond-shaped eyes and copious mascara, set in clearly marked eye sockets. The only additions this show brings to the table are insipid coloured outlines and some wishy-washy shading. And that makes the full set of fixed Blueys. I don't love that the majority of these are recycled publicity stills, Frankensteined into grinning blue chimeras, but sometimes that's just where life takes you. And now, back to Fish. Cartoon Network's weird obsession with sticking to one line width, come rain, shine, or Sharknado, is only exacerbated by Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, the show which frequently has no line thickness at all. I also could not possibly tell you why buck teeth and glassy eyes have been added to this latter-day SpongeBob facial expression. Outlines are typically used in Foster's to delineate mouths, eyes, and clothes, while many other objects are depicted purely as blocks of colour, especially things that are supposed to be soft, and as anyone who's ever used the people's elbow on a goldfish can tell you, Darwin fits the bill. I appreciate the funkiness of the swollen peanut allergy head on this chowderized Darwin, but I absolutely cannot abide by that robe. Dressing him similarly to Chowder is not replicating the art style, it's just drawing a bad DIY Halloween costume. While the limbs are frequently stumpy and formless, popular facial features in the chowder sphere include haphazardly attached peepers, a substantial maw, and cheek lines. Regular show Darwin is actually fairly convincing, even if we're just two squiggly pupils away from winding up in Rick and Morty. Why the hat though? If hats were a thing every regular show character had, in the same way Sonic characters all wear gloves and Adventure Time characters all wear on my nerves, that'd be fine. But it's an oddly superfluous touch that doesn't really help with recognition of Darwin or the show, so we're sending that thing to a Goodwill. Speaking of Adventure Time, that's the best one of them all, in my opinion. Though again, what's with the watery eyes? Someone cutting onions in here? Did they just watch the Futurama episode with the dog? Their thigh gap should look like the legs on a dining table, but otherwise we're set. And of course, as always, the Powerpuff Girls style swap is just abysmal. Hey, wait a minute. Where is it? In every single one of these graphics that Cartoon Network's done previously, there's been a Powerpuff Girls one smack bang in the middle. And every single time, instead of actually drawing the character in the true Powerpuff style, they just merge them with the girls instead. It should look like this, but it's not here. They just didn't do it this time. I saw some commenters suggesting that maybe whoever drew this saw my last video and decided to take my advice. But flattered as I was, I laughed it off as pretty dang unlikely. But in that video, I went into Cartoon Network's track record on drawing in the PPG style and pointed out that attempting it is kind of a lose-lose proposition. If you draw your PPG style characters to look like the girls, you're doing it wrong. The girls are unique designs in their own show, and the other cast members simply do not look like that. But conversely, the girls are absolutely the most recognizable thing about the show. So if you don't draw your character to look like them, there's a pretty high chance no one will be able to tell what the style is. After I laid all this out, they've suddenly decided to break their streak and ditch the style altogether for the first time. Surely just a coincidence though, right? It's not like they took any more of my advice. See, they did something else that was unprecedented in this illustration too. Let me draw your attention once again to the 4 human Darwins. In the last video, I advised that when a style is not totally compatible with your chosen character, like bringing a human into a world of cartoon animals or vice versa, it might help you to alter your character's biology to fit the new universe. Now, in Cartoon Network's many previous style swapping efforts, not once have they ever changed the species of the target character before. Not only that, but they've already depicted animal characters in 3 out of the 4 styles that this time were deemed to require a cross-species transformation. Of course, that absolutely could all still be completely coincidental. I certainly don't want to get ahead of myself here, but after noticing that they clearly did things a little differently this time, I can't help but wonder, did the artist watch the last video? Could they be watching this time? Is it you? Because if it is... Sorry I roasted all of your drawings. Again. Let's play a game. I'll draw someone famous, and 3 people that guess who it is in the comments will get a shout out in the next episode. If your guess for the caricature last time was the English actor Matt Smith, you are very much correct. Today's rule from the Wheel of Winners is... the 3 longest responses win. It was a thorny one, but Felicia Rose Antonia picked correctly, coming first with 1,322 characters. Don't hug Roy Gribbleston, he's scared up 229 characters in order to take second, and the Silver Eighth's time to shine came from those 214 characters that got him to third. Well done everyone, thanks for playing. The nose on this week's subject is so long, you need to catch a connecting flight in Kuala Lumpur just to get from one end to the other. In fact, ever the stickler for thematic consistency, traversing their face in general would constitute a lengthy journey. You'd have a quicker job reading the complete works of Tolstoy. And on top of all that, their forehead is so very tall that a louse who chose to jump ship would reach terminal velocity before it even cleared this person's eyebrows. Now who could this be? If you know who that is, let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, it might be your style to hit the subscribe button and ring that bell. But this has been the Harry Gold Show. So until next time, stay safe, and God bless.